search engines as they are statically going down. They are dying. Any website that is protected by Cloudflare will no longer have bots be allowed to crawl it. No crawlers are allowed except for the ones that now pay.
People are aware of what's happening in any corner of the world because it's free open web.
Information becomes money. Information is currency.
It's definitely a fundamental change in how the internet would be looked at for sure.
If this succeeds, the open web does no longer quote unquote exist.
Would you ditch your Google Chrome tomorrow because of AI? That's basically what the world is moving towards, at least trying to. Cloudflare, that receives a huge amount of the internet traffic today, recently supported a open source browser which is different to Chromium. Yet that same Chromium that Google Chrome is built on, that a lot of people have loved and enjoyed for a long time. I think 63% of the internet runs on some version of Chromium or Chrome. This is pretty big coming from a big player, and specifically now with AI being top of mind, their browser is geared for that AI world that we're moving towards. Their browsers is shaping the internet for what it could be with AI scrolling the internet. But there are bigger questions being asked about the open web versus a closed web that this could produce. So Caleb and I shared insights on this particular topic, what it means for the industry, what it means from a cybersecurity perspective, and potentially for your organization moving forward as well. As always, if you enjoyed this episode of AI Security Podcast, definitely give us a follow, subscribe. It means a lot. It helps us making a bigger impact in the community by democratizing more of AI security for each one of you. So I really appreciate the support in subscribing and following the work we do, whether it's on audio podcasts like Apple, Spotify, or on video platforms like YouTube or LinkedIn. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'll talk to you soon. Peace. Hello and welcome to another episode of AI Security Podcast. Today we're talking about an evolving space in Cloudflare, with Cloudflare. But Caleb, would you mind letting the audience know a bit about what we're going to talk about today?
Yeah, I wanted to particularly produce this episode because I think I'm a little bit more on the cutting edge of what's happening. And I feel like this is something that's going to be pretty impactful to us in the future. And this is about Cloudflare and their announcement and their focus around how AI crawlers, and I think that being a dependency and foundation, and then future, how AI bots are going to work with Cloudflare. So let me break down a little bit of what this is. So Cloudflare made this announcement that basically said, hey, from now on, any website that is protected by Cloudflare will no longer have bots be allowed to crawl it. Therefore, all bots, no matter who you are, specifically AI bots is their sort of call out here, you will not allowed to be crawled on any website, just by default. So you as an owner of a website by Cloudflare, you have to go in and specifically grant whitelist AI crawlers to crawl your content. And of course, their purpose in doing this is they're saying that the way the web used to work, which was the quote unquote open web, you produced content, that content was available to anyone. Search engines like Google, et cetera, would crawl that content. And then when people would search, you would click a link and then get referred back to its original source. This was the open web. It was a nice deal between search engines and the content providers so that you could, you as a search engine would be central, easy to find, and then you would refer that traffic to me so that I could clearly take advantage of it. Obviously, AI comes into the scene. AI becomes this God of all things, the oracle of knowledge, where it just answers your question directly on what you want to know from the content you produced and never refers you back to the original content. So things like ads obviously become moot. Things like the source and origin of where this content or information came from becomes moot. They never go to your actual website, becomes moot. This has obviously created a much different world to what is going to happen in the future. And I think it's pretty clear that everyone can agree that, at least for now, search engines as they are statically are going down. They are dying. We are seeing AI being the fundamental way at which you can access this information. So Cloudflare says, we have a potential solution for this. So what we're going to do is we're going to block all AI. So now, no matter what your content, AI engines can't do it unless they pay. And if AI pays you as the content provider, then you will allow them to crawl your content. And so they're basically saying, let's put the onus on not the consumer driving traffic to you and potentially paying you, we'll put the onus on Cloudflare to effectively say, you, the AI company, will pay. And then that will then allow the consumer to access your information. So how are they going to do this? This is sort of the big question. Well, since they have become the gateway, quote unquote, to, I believe the numbers I've read, about 20% of the internet, right? So 20% of all web is gated by Cloudflare. Then what they're going to do is they're going to say, okay, all that 20%, here's what's going to happen. OpenAI, what you're going to do is you're going to register an account with us. We'll be the bank. Cloudflare will be the bank. You register an account. You'll sign up. You'll sign. You'll send us basically say, hey, this is our key. We're going to sign this for you. And we're going to say, great, now we know who you are. This is your authentication as a crawler. Now what's going to happen is every time OpenAI uses their crawler bot to crawl websites, they will always issue out, this is who they are, and this is their header signed by their crawler as it crawls content. When Cloudflare recognizes that this is OpenAI's bot, because it's clearly signed by OpenAI, it will see the content and it will automatically say, is the content at which you're crawling, did the customer, the website creator, want to charge you? And if the creator says, yes, I do want to charge you, then it does a negotiation, a bidding plan between both Cloudflare and OpenAI and the creator. So for example, let's say you're the creator and you say, every page on my website is worth, I don't know, at least 10 cents each. Every view is worth 10 cents. That's the price that you set. Then when the OpenAI comes and says, I want your content, Cloudflare will say to the crawler, hey, this content is worth 10 cents per page. And OpenAI can decide, is that worth it? Should I spend 10 cents a page to crawl this domain's website or not? And if it agrees, it will say, yes, I agree to that payment. It will then crawl, that content will then be allowed, and then it will move on. If it refuses, if it says, hey, that's too expensive, OpenAI is not going to pay that, then it moves on to other content. Now, what happens is at the end of, let's say, whatever spending cycle they've discovered, they decide between OpenAI and Cloudflare, at the end of every quarter and every month, a bill gets charged to Cloudflare from OpenAI, and then OpenAI pays it to Cloudflare. And then that proceeds then get distributed to you, the content creator, in your account. So this is now the payment transaction that is going on in this automated fashion. So now what's really interesting about all of this is the content creator sets a price. The OpenAI crawler decides whether that price is relevant. You have a lot of customization as a content. You can say just these pages are only this much. You can even say all of my website is 0.001 cent, but just these 5 pages are 5 cents. And you could even set it up this way so that this is now the way at which you can then monetize from OpenAI and the AI provider for crawling your content. This is now sort of the fundamental base thing that Cloudflare has implemented that says no crawlers are allowed except for the ones that now pay, depending upon how the content provider has set it. So obviously, now I'm going to stop here, Ashish, so we can probably discuss a bit, but this is only, I think, phase 1. This is what I would call the fundamentals of how does this affect the next generation of how the web looks. So, but before we get to phase 2 on that, maybe I'll pause.
No, I mean, because I think when you spoke about this and I was doing my research, so for context for people, this was announced like literally 7 days before we did this recording. So a lot of information is still developing as well. I love the idea of a challenger for the norm. Like to your point about the open web versus, hey, I can actually get paid for, as someone who's actually creating content, I'm like, it's great that I can get paid more, paid for creating content. So I think there's a good to that. But I think where I found it interesting is that when I was reading about it, the first few thoughts I came to my mind was more around, if you remember the browser Go, Brave.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think there's another one that I came across recently. I think it's called Arc. So I think it's worthwhile seeing where the adoption would come from. It would come if it comes from people who are like, I think it was when I was reading about it, they basically said it's focused on people who are like technical writers, like bloggers and content sites. So I wonder and as exciting as this idea sounds, would the success of it would be in adoption from enterprise, or would it be where it is standing today? I think, where do you see it go? Because I'm at my current phase where when I read it, they talk about I think I was reading on the Omarchy, which is the Linux distribution, and Ladybird is the browser project. And the founder or the person who wrote the Omarchy thing basically said it is basically focused on technical writers. Not, he didn't specifically call out bloggers. I'm trying to find the place where there was a particular place where I saw it. But I guess my point being, I love the idea, but I wonder, having things like these, would it add friction and do what DuckDuckGo or others experienced, where hey, the world is going in one direction? And by the way, I'm just kind of open thoughts here. Where do you see this in terms of, is the sentiment at the moment when you talk to other CISOs and other people, is the sentiment that there is a need for this as well, out of curiosity?
So first, I will get to the security impacts of this in just a bit,
Okay.
right? But maybe I'll start with that. So let's just look at sort of what I explained, which is this is a fundamental shift in Cloudflare's approach of how they're saying the new web should work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is,
Yep.
if we think that the majority of open web traffic now becomes AI because the consumer's interface to the internet, to knowledge, becomes through AI, then open web changes drastically, which already it's happening. I think they said 90% of most web traffic is coming through AI crawling
Jeez.
right
Wow.
now, right? Like some crazy amount. Like, don't quote me on that. But I remember reading something like that. But let's just make assumption in the future that is true, because a lot of our interactions with the world's knowledge becomes through this filter becoming AI. Okay, so let's talk about the security impacts of sort of, well, what does this mean sort of moving forward? So first of all, I think you'll hear a lot in security about authentication, identity, authenticity, right? I even gave presentations at RSA last year on this exact same topic, which is, hey, AI changes the way, it's a forcing function for this, right? Where most of the web is quote unquote anonymized. How does that change? So now what they're saying is, hey, we're creating an authentication method. Cloudflare is presenting a method that says, you want to access web content, you have to be authenticated first. Number one, you need to sign up, you need to create a certificate, you need to register yourselves with us, and you need to have a financial bank account with us through whatever Stripe or payment provider you may choose before you can access any content which is behind Cloudflare in a crawling form. You need to authenticate, you need to have a financial accountability for it, and then you need to sign every request you send as your identity to access any content behind what we've got. Okay, so now you've got this sort of fundamentals being played out here around, hey, our belief in the next generation of web is identity and authentication are required. Not only that, so, and again, remember, this is only for AI crawlers right now in the sense of what they've sort of provided, but this is going to move into stage two. So let's talk about stage two. So Ashish, you also saw Cloudflare released open source their own browser, right? They said, hey, we have, as we know, I don't know the exact numbers on this, but I think, the majority of all browsers today are all based on Chromium, right?
Yeah, they said, I think the stat is 65% of the internet uses some version of Chromium.
Yes. So like the ones that you said, all the privacy browsers, I think minus Firefox, are all based off of Chromium. Everyone does their own version of Chromium.
Yeah.
And what Cloudflare has said is they said, hey, there needs to be some competitiveness to Chromium because clearly Google owns Chromium. And so what they did is they wrote from scratch an entire browser-based new browser called Ladybird, right? Mm-hmm. And then they released that open source, and they said, hey, similar like what Chromium is, we're now releasing an entire independent non-Chromium based browser so that anyone else can now adopt this as a base, and there's competition in the market between browsers. By the way, we saw this play out earlier way in our tech cycle. Remember when Google did this to Microsoft, right?
Oh,
Microsoft,
Internet Explorer, yeah.
yeah, there's Internet Explorer. Google then produced Chromium, or no, not Chromium, Chrome. And
Yeah.
as a new browser that they published to compete with IE, and look at the power that brought to them. So we're seeing this play out again. History sort of repeats that now Cloudflare is doing this. Okay, well, how does that have anything to do with this crawler pay per web thing, you might ask, right?
Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, let's say, for example, what Cloudflare has already done is they are partnering with browser companies. So let's say they partner with Firefox, or they partner with Arc, and they say, Arc, anytime you now register an account with Cloudflare, and any one of your instances is signed by you, I now know it's your browser. I will then allow you to access web content behind us, because you, as Arc, as a browser, are now identifying yourself, authenticating yourself to access content behind Cloudflare as the gate. So now what's happening is they are taking a quote unquote whitelisting approach to any website behind Cloudflare. You could see where this is going. You can see, oh, AI, you've now authenticated yourself, OpenAI, Anthropic, whoever you are, you're allowed to access content, you're authenticated. Oh, Arc browser, you've also signed up, partnered with us. You're also signing all of your requests. So I know that anyone who's using Arc browser can now authenticate and access all of the content behind it. Oh, we are now producing Ladybird, which is going to have all of the right pipelines to also authenticate itself to behind Cloudflare content. So it's easy and seamless for the consumer. So now what's happening is you're seeing this authentication identity framework start getting integrated into any web content behind Cloudflare.
I think, would you
They are
say?
becoming an authentication gateway
Yep.
behind the internet.
I think I was going to say it'll be really interesting as another phase from this is, you know how at the moment by default most people either pick there are mostly two camps in most organizations. Either you're an Internet Explorer person, but the moment you get your first laptop, you download and install Google Chrome or Firefox or whatever your favorite browser is. You
Yeah.
rarely, and no hate against Internet Explorer, they did really well to move from Netscape Navigator to IE. That was a great jump, but then they were not meant for the time when Google Chrome took over. And I wonder, this is kind of one of those dilemmas, and maybe to your point, the next phase of this is that if that becomes a standard, that hey, browser is your identity, and any organization that is walking towards a responsible AI would go, hey, you know what, for our organization, we believe that we only produce responsible AI, and a way to prove that to our customers and stakeholders and everyone else, we're picking browsers like the ones that are from Cloudflare or the other privacy enabled ones as an organization default, because we believe that's how we we put our best front forward in the organization. I think I don't know, I feel like there is some opportunity there as well for them to maybe even change the way organizations look at responsible AI, not just the hey, I produce AI that produces safe results, but also authenticates, because I mean there's so many open source versions of fine-tuned LLMs for floating around. How do I know one is the right enterprise version versus the other one, especially in the future if more enterprises start releasing their fine-tuned LLM models as a paid model?
I think that this is going to have more impacts around agentic, right? And how, like, this is going to be more around how do I differentiate between human and non-human? So if you take like right now, Cloudflare's current protocol is solving the hair on fire problem for quote unquote content people, which is, oh my God, copyright AI, Wall Street
Yep.
Journal.
Yep.
Like what is the way at which the Wall Street Journal today makes money? You have to pay them a subscription fee.
Yep.
Right? They lose a ton of influence and readership because of their paywall. Right?
Yep.
That's very clear. However, that's a consumer problem. But what they're saying is, hey, we will remove Wall Street Journals from AI, so AI can't produce any of this stuff, which will force more paywall to you. However, that this is a B2B problem, that Cloudflare is solving right now, right?
Yeah.
You're a content creator, you sign up, AI pays me, I pay you. The problem,
Yeah.
of course, with that is that's very low revenue to the content creator
Yeah.
because they're only getting paid, once every one of these AI guys crawl their website. That's not a lot of revenue.
Yeah.
However, where a lot of revenue absolutely comes is in stage 2. Stage 2 says we move this from enterprise B2B to consumer to business. So if you are using a browser that now supports this payment method, so you as Ashish say, I have a $5 budget in my account, in my browser that is now registered to Cloudflare. So that any time I can now go to Wall Street Journal with no paywall. I'll go to Wall Street Journal and read articles, and they will charge me per article in my browser. Which, by the way, I think Arc tried something similar to this a long time ago, at the beginning.
It
right?
didn't work though, I think, from memory.
It didn't work. Yeah, because it didn't have the power or there's a couple things, obviously. Yeah, there's a forcing function of the shift of change in technology, which we're having with AI. There is Cloudflare as the beast and behemoth that it is, and the control, and by the way, agents as a pressure now coming into play. So now I will then pay 0.002 cents for every article I read on Wall Street Journal. I now have a protocol and a standard for being able to authenticate to this content, negotiate the content, have the payment providers in place with that. Now I can also, now the consumer, I am now paying for content as I read and do it, so they get their access to it, which also gets into agents, which of course, every problem we talk about right now is identity and authorization of agents and how they work.
Yeah.
Well, now since I'm signing everything as both myself and who I'm using in order to do this account, agents will work on my behalf, which they'll have the ability, I will give them the ability to probably sign under my organization. I, as a person, become an organization. They now both authenticate themselves as working on behalf of me, have a payment protocol that they can negotiate, the ability for Cloudflare to recognize that traffic and control that traffic and the abilities of that traffic. So you see where this is sort of like, you can see the road here where this goes.
I think it's in a funny way, and I don't remember the transition, what triggered the IE to Google Chrome. I just remember always using either Firefox or Google Chrome. I was trying to think as to what was that trigger point, and if there were climatic or economical reasons or whatever the situation was that back in the day when people suddenly decided, as an internet, we decided we're going to go for Chrome. I wonder. This
performance.
is also sorry.
It was performance.
Or it was performance. So
IE was a memory hog. If you remember, it was slow.
I remember that. Just opening up and plus, I think people adding policies onto it made people hate it even more because you could add policies as a corporate environment, and now suddenly it's like it was already slow to begin with. Things would not load. I remember. So that was the reason that people moved over. Chrome could handle that better.
Chrome was like when you switched to Chrome because it was fast, it was low on memory, which by the way is completely opposite today. Chrome is now where IE was.
Yeah. I mean, the number of tabs people have open on Chrome these days is an evidence of that as well.
Yeah.
No, I guess where I'm going with this is that I wonder if this is also the right environment for this to happen as well, because AI is top of mind for a lot of people. And content is, for lack of a better word, king at the moment for a lot of people. Like, we all consume content. That's how we know what's happening in the world, whether you like it or not. I mean, people still subscribe to newspapers and everything else as well. I wonder the reason why they picked that is because they realize that's, in a way, the heart of the internet is information. And if you are able to support that ecosystem in a way that that internet shifts, they start promoting it as to help your stage 2 come into fruition, where suddenly all the content creators saying, hey, by the way, we only support Ladybird as a way to go forward. I know you are consuming this in a regular browser today, but moving forward from, I don't know, October 31st onwards, we would like everyone to go on Ladybird because then we can provide you this content for free, whatever the reason may be. And 30 days free, 40 days free.
Yeah, like Cloudflare is clearly not approaching this in the sense that they're going to approach it the same way Google approached it, which is it's not that you have to use, Ladybird to get something. It's an open standard, and Ladybird is open source. And what Cloudflare has produced as this payment system is an open standard, right? They are producing this as not, hey, only Cloudflare can do this. Google can do this. Zscaler, Palo Alto, whoever it is, if you're on Edge, AWS, Google Cloud, you can now use this open standard for payment and communication of these, this method in order to do this. Right? Like it would be dumb for them to say only cloud, because what they are trying to do is they are open standarding, even though they were the creators, originators, and now, quote unquote, probably primary maintainers of this open source, similar to Google is Chromium, right?
Yeah. That's what they did. Yeah, fair.
But I guess but you know what that means is they can adopt these open standards in that browser really fast because it's already there.
Do you reckon people like Auth, like companies like Akamai, would also make a move soon then? Because you would also think it's like we did this episode the other day about agents communication, right? The whole MCP versus A2A thing. They're all open standards, they're all open source, but it's like the big companies want to, I own this kind of a open, quote unquote, but let me just donate that to a open source community like Red Hat or CNCF or whatever. But then at the end of the day, people remember me for creating that standard. And that I wonder if there's that coming as well, considering this is obviously very fresh news. So I wonder Akamai makes a Google Chromium something in the play. That would be interesting to see how it kind of comes into realization. I also, maybe one thing to kind of talk about here, now we talk about identity authentication as the pillars that are being created. I do also want to talk about another possibility, which I think we kind of touched on, where the company by Stephen Ivey and Sam Altman, where they're basically saying browsers are not the foundation for the world of AI, quote unquote agentic AI. It needs to be the other devices which are like more omnipresent rather than.
Oh, you're talking about the Jony Ivey, the always recording physical form factor.
Yeah, kind of things like that. I wonder if this kind of adds to that as well in terms of where this could go, because I imagine that would have to have access to the internet as well for it to be able to do things, read things, come back with, hey, or even the ChatGPT Pulse that got announced.
Well, but the way I think about it is this, what they're talking about is the user's interface towards AI. But AI itself still has to agentically go do things for you, right?
Yep.
And the problem is, okay, so if AI goes and accesses your Gmail, how are they going to authenticate themselves to do that? How does Google know the difference between the agent doing searching email or you as a human searching email? And is it reasonable to expect that Google should provide different ways for either? So if it's an agent accessing on your behalf, I could probably have way more efficient, better things to serve that agent versus you as a person and how you want to be served. And so like them knowing the difference between the two is going to change a lot of things. Like, for example, I may have one credit card, right? But my AI agent should not be able to charge more than $50 on that card, because I could get screwed in the sense of doing this, because like, hey, if the agent goes and gets overcharged or buys things that it shouldn't, this is not a good thing to have. However, as a human, I just use the credit card at which has no limit, because obviously I can make that choice. So there has to be an identity mechanism to know an agent versus a human. It has to know whether it's acting on your behalf versus not acting on your behalf.
Yeah.
These are things, and think about this from a SaaS service. I won't create my own agents on my laptop. I will sign up for a service that then has agents running on behalf of me to go do the things which I needed to do. How do I authorize those particular agents, but not the entire company, right? Like there's these kinds of identities that need to be managed. And so if I'm talking to Jony Ivey's always on recording, I'm like, hey, go book that restaurant reservation for me. It's going to go have an agent, which should have some sort of identity, which then can go to the restaurant, which on behalf of me has a maximum limit to book that reservation, and then the ability to go do it. And the restaurant should know this is an agent doing it, so that it provides more efficient methods of doing this.
You could just tell it to pre-order your wife's book as well.
Yeah, that's right.
Just like, hey, my wife has a book coming up. Can you just go and, I mean, obviously, for shout out to Kathy as well. So she does have a book coming up if people want to pre-order that. But I think I also love what you just said right now in terms of, irrespective, the foundation hasn't really changed. We're still accessing the internet. We're still like for whether it's to buy books or to make decisions or find the internet. I kind of feel bad for Google in this as well, in a way, because I don't know if you noticed, but they've started coming out with services that are competing with the existing AI ecosystem. Obviously they did the whole Gemini image creation thing. They did the whole there's a software called N8N,
Yeah,
the low code one. They have a competitor to that as well now. I think it's called Opal. I think Google Opal, but literally it does exactly the same thing as N8N. I'm like, wait, why are they? And I wonder,
there's a lot.
if
By the way, there's a lot of these AI orchestration, automated, no code kinds of systems.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's plenty, but I guess N8N is just one of the examples, but which is probably more popular. At least in my circle, it seems to be quite popular. And I wonder if it's making me feel that, I imagine Google as a company is feeling threatened quite a bit by Cloudflare, another big player coming and challenging its browser space. Perplexity has a Comet browser thing as well. I think someone else just released another browser. You almost have these bigger players, and I think OpenAI mentioned they're coming over the browser as well. So as an ecosystem, all of us will probably be deciding very soon which camp are we on in this new world of AI that we're moving into.
Again, doing a call out to our previous episode where we discussed browsers being the next big thing because it has all the context.
Yeah. People should check out that episode. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, we did that before. We did a call. We predicted this.
Yeah.
Which I'm also saying in this episode.
Actually, funny enough, you did something right now as well. You spoke about the identity piece. I don't know if you've seen the messaging around. It's like everyone's talking about NHI as if that's the next best thing for, if you have AI, you definitely have NHI, the non-human identity. So in a way, you're predicting that as well, that's going to be like one of the foundations for what a lot of people would talk about from an agentic AI perspective. Like what and how you manage that identity is going to be a key pillar for what cybersecurity people would look at, or even tech people would look at, as to, can I give it no permission, not permission? How do I know if it's Akamai, Cloudflare, or Google, or whoever else?
Yep. The one thing I would like to state, though, is where some of the debate comes into play here. So I think we should end, or at least talk a little bit about there is a little controversy around what Cloudflare is doing. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the first initial aspect of this is, Cloudflare is doing this. They want to be the gateway to the internet, right? Yeah. So like, what is like, how's obviously doing this is within Cloudflare's interests in being able to do this. Now, them making it an open standard, them making it something that is viable, I think does not detract against that. So if you look at the protocol, how it works, how they're thinking about the next version of the web, like, I think it's pretty good, right? Like in my mind, like, this is sort of what's coming. Cloudflare obviously has a big part of that, but like, I think if this continues, Google can get in this game, Microsoft can get in this, anyone can get in this game. The controversy that I'm more worried about, and I think there's other big factors of people talking about this too, is the open web. If this succeeds, the open web does no longer, quote unquote, exist. Because what happens is information now becomes siloed, right? Yeah. Information becomes money. Information is currency. And so now there's no such thing. Like, I can't just spin up a crawler and crawl the web anymore because I just don't have the capital. Unless I go raise $50 billion to go crawl the web, I don't have the capital to do so. And that's something that, look at the innovation that we've been able to have by being able to do things like that because it's open. If this gets in place where every content provider and others start saying, I'm going to charge 50 cents a dollar for people who are browsing our stuff, and this becomes, all that information becomes very, very siloed. And this really then allocates within only the internet now is only accessible between very few providers. who guard these gates, and also to the people who are extraordinarily wealthy who have raised a lot of capital to access and pay that price. So that's where the controversy starts coming into play, where people are saying, hey, obviously there's, people have talked about Web 2.0 or Web 3.0 has always been referenced to crypto and the blockchain. But I think this is true Web 3.0, which is, information becomes cost. And these silos start occurring.
Are there people who maintain, like, the whole, when we type in a website, the whole www dot, isn't that like a body or some, like a governing body that decides? So I wonder if they would step in if that happens. Because exactly to what you said, one of the reasons why people are aware of what's happening in, I don't know, in any corner of the world, any given moment, is because it's free open web. Being able to charge money for things like, and I wonder if they would have to make categories for this as well. If they started asking for, hey, you can't crawl my web, but then maybe people make categories for, is it okay to get news? Because that should be free.
For sure. But here's the thing: is it will be up to the content provider to make that decision, right?
Yeah, not the free internet.
Yeah. And it's also interesting because it's a new set of economics for the internet, which is the internet only existed this way because of ads, right? Like ads drove the ability for the content to be free, but I got paid through my ads, right?
So for the consumer, you may not be paying directly, but they're still getting free content, but the creator or the producer of the content is still making money on the background.
That's right. Now the producer and creator of the content is now making money directly through accessibility of its content. Now, does that ever remove ads? Of course, like there's no way. Ads have existed forever. But what I would see is now the providers are not only going to get money from ads, but they're also going to get money from their content.
Yeah, right. I think it's definitely a fundamental change in how the internet would be looked at for sure. And I kind of agree. Maybe it is the 3.0 that should have been the 3.0 rather than the crypto version of it or the NFT version of it. But I definitely find myself, at least based on the conversations we have had so far, I would definitely be keeping an eye on where this goes and whether it gets traction. And to your point, maybe the environmental conditions are just apt. Chrome is just that tiny bit slower right now. That is annoying. AI is crawling the internet, so maybe
AI
this is the right
should be in the web, should be in the browser.
Yeah. So we are in a way we are in a way in a situation or an environment which is very much
you need identity for agents and agentic actions to take place. You need a way for them to pay and have some sort of accountability for the actions they take. All of this sort of aligns very much.
I don't know. I know we did an episode on identity, but did we ever cover if the existing open standards cover for identity for authentication or authorization? Like the OAuth 2.0 still applies to agentic AI. I think there was a whole. We never spoke about that part, but I think there's an existing identity standard. But this is like, I wonder if this would ask people to have a 3.0 version or for a 4.0 version for OAuth as well. Because this is just browser. What other devices are winning? Mobile devices, desktop. I don't know how far we'll go with this, but I think it's a good food for thought for people who are going to tune in. Let us know what you think in the comments. But thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back with another episode on this. But keen to know and keen to keep an eye on where Cloudflare takes it, and maybe by the time we record this again, Akamai or Google has another version, or this has a response to this coming out. Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Thank you for watching or listening to that episode of AI Security Podcast. This was brought to you by techriot.io. If you want to hear or watch more episodes of AI Security, check that out on aisecuritypodcast.com. And in case you are interested in learning more about cloud security, you should check out a sister podcast called Cloud Security Podcast, which is available on cloudsecuritypodcast.tv. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next episode. Peace.